Hi guys, welcome to first concept. What is science? It's a very basic question when we are going to talk about learning about much more science. So science is a pupil fun observations, explanations, explorations, properties, inferences, questions, technology and everywhere. So we cannot define science properly. So it's all everything. But if we can say that science is a knowledge, it's all about natural world that is received by observations and experiment. So everything we will take under the science. Just science is a knowledge, it's all about nature. Or a simple sentence if you can say, science is nothing but studying about nature, especially what things are happening in nature. So let us say certain science we already know. Let me take an example of life science. In the life science, biology, it's study of living things, and the sub branches if we can take that, ecology, zoology, doctor study of anatomy, and botany study of plants. It's much more difficult, which I feel, because it's all about dealing with life. Study about living things we call as its life science. But when it comes to physical science, so study about both matter and energy. So that's what we deal in physics in the first place. Some branches of the physics you can take. Chemistry itself comes under the physical science. And the physics itself, the study of energy, and astronomy, oceanography. So these are different branches of physical science. Now, to study science, first we need to make a good observation. Being a good scientist involves making great observations and then asking questions. Just take example at here. We know that all the story of Newton. Newton sat under apple tree and apple fallen. So then just he made an observation, falling apple. That is the only the observation what he did. And from that observation, he asked a question. What was the question? His question was, why apple do not fly up? Why it is fallen down? That was his question when he sat under the apple tree. So like that, when certain things if you saw, so several people can observe the same event but have different explanations. So let us the picture on the screen. Now if you observe clearly, are the dots or the white or the black? If you can observe the checks on the screen, if I ask a question, are the dots or the white or the black? Or I made some diagrams for you. Just observe the picture and what you see. So that's all. Everything depends upon your ability. I hope you are seeing what I am seeing. Yep, just made a clear observation on this. So it's all your ability to observe, and if the two persons observe the same thing and they can get different opinions, let's change it. Now here the question, which vertical line looks longer? Here the two vertical lines are there. So which vertical line looks longer? So make your own observation. Let me change. Now this is much curious. It depends upon your mental ability, how we think, what we perspect, what we see, what we perceive. Is the shaded side inside or outside? Observe the cube on the screen. The question here I am asking, is the shaded side, the side which is shaded or the dotted region in the box, which is inside or outside? So obviously that answer depends upon the which angle you look, that gives changes the side. And one more, which shaded circle seems bigger? So here the two circles which are the shaded, in that which shaded circle seems bigger? Observe carefully. Yeah, this is one more curious. What you are seeing in this picture? What you are seeing in this picture? Try to make your own observations. Give some work to your brain. You will enjoy it. It's very complicated. Try to observe this picture as long as you can. And try to make some observations from your memory. That's all your imaginations. What you are going to see from this picture. So that's all depends upon your observations. See, when it comes to the things, so the same observation can be done by so many people. So they will observe so many things. So that's what really things happens when it comes to the real situations. Now, what does the word science means? Here we made so many observations, and that observations we need to get some conclusion. So here we are taking the help of science. What does the word science means? So science is an organized body of knowledge explaining the natural world by making observations and experimenting. So we need to observe first. So being a student or being a science student especially, your the first quality should be observe. Whether it is small or big, just observe it, and observe it, try to analyze it. Suppose if a bird is making nest, a beautiful nest, or a butterfly is making its cocoon, so all kind of the natural observe. So those all observations increases our curiosity. So that's what really science means. It is an organized body of knowledge explaining the natural world by making observations and experimenting. Once a scientist has made such an observations, they have to make decisions about what they saw. So that decisions leads us to conclusions. Now here, what is observations? Try to get it point very clearly. Observation means something we do with our eyes. Yeah, first thing goes to that. Suppose you are observing a plant. So what we do? So you will see the plant first. When we see something, we observe it. However, all of our five senses can be used to make observations: sight, hearing, taste, and touch and smell. So with the help of our senses, what we perceive, so that brings to observations. Now, sometimes we used to inference. What is the meaning of inference? It's an assumption or conclusion based on observation. Or in another words, if you can say, it's an logical interpretation based on observations and prior knowledge. So it is just like something. Okay, let us take me an example right here. Suppose sometimes we already having this about, we know it, why the sky appears blue in color. So that is the observation what we made. And to give that answer, if you are bringing some logical interpretation, so that we will consider as an inference. So inference is something is different from the observation. So it's an logical conclusion or logical interpretation about the proper knowledge. Now I'm going to show some pictures. Try to make two observations and try to make two inferences. So observe the picture. Sorry. Try to observe this picture and make your own observations, any two own observations and two inferences to make it. So I would like to show what is the real observation means. Observation means really what we see, what we perceive with our senses. And what is inferences? So it's an assumption. Just make any assumptions, or you can make any conclusion which is based on your observation. So I want to make any two observations. You just observe the picture and you make any two assumptions or conclusions. So by seeing this picture on the screen, try to make two observations and two conclusions. I hope you are doing well. Yeah. So by observing the picture on the screen, try to make any two observations which comes with your knowledge and any two inferences. Just make a conclusion. So by seeing here, I was laughing because watch for eyes. So the bear fallen on the ice. Yeah, that's your observation. What will the conclusion you make? Because ice is slippery surface. So that what comes in my mind first. Now, this is a very complicated explanation. So try to observe the movement of this cat. So invisible explosion. So the great thing with cat, so if you drop cat always, it lands on its four legs. Even if you drop the cat from 2 to 3 story building, it's not at all a problem. The cat always lands on its four legs. So that is something is great. Now, here I would like to define what is scientific method. So the scientific method is the process of experimentation that is used to explore observations and answer questions. It's a process for experimentation that is used to explore. Explore means to search more observations. And from the observations, we need to get answers. So that method we are defining as scientific method. Mostly scientists use the scientific method to search cause and effect relationship in nature. So this word is important, cause and effect. So this method always works. So if something is cause, what it affect. Suppose, let us take an example. Suppose this year, if there was no proper crop, what could it affect in the upcoming years? So that is effect. Otherwise, if you can think oppositely, suppose this year we had very good rain. So if the crop yield is more, how it could affect that economy of the country? Yeah, that is also one of the scientific method. So these cause and effect, we need to make relationship in the nature, especially when we are dealing to the physics and all. Otherwise, if you can say, scientists, they design such an experiment so that changes in one item cause something else to change in the predictable way. So that's what everything can done in the science experiments. Always we need to predict what is the cause and what its effect. Now, to discuss scientific method, so there are certain steps are involved. So the first very step is make a problem statement. So suppose if you make an observation, that observations always make a question. Oh, why did it happen? Suppose this year is no rain at all. So that is the observation what we made. So the first question we need to ask, what would be the cause? Always we need to ask in the observation, very first step is in the form of a question. So that's the very first observation, very first step in the scientific method. Now, if you ask a question, if you raise a questions, to get it answer, we need to do some research. What is the research means? It's a certain background information about the topic. You have to know about your topic before you can experiment. Suppose you want to observe, let us take an observe, the life of a cheetah. So that is the question. Now to explore that, you need to do certain research. At some extent, we need to go to the jungle and we need to shoot how it lives, what it eats, and so many things we need to observe. Sometimes the scientist will stay certain long days to observe all these natural calamities in lonely places. So they all sacrifice. They will to get that result. So these all things happens in all over the world. So that what science really gives fun. So first we need to observe, that is the making a question in the step 1. And to get it answer, we need to do the research. So that research we need to take the help of the books. Now present situations we are having the internet brings the world as a small village, so we can get all over the information. So that gives the second step in the scientific method, that we need to do the research. Now coming to the third step. After doing the certain research, so we need to make the hypothesis. So what is the meaning of hypothesis? Means it's a possible answer to the problem statement. It's not exactly the conclusion, it's just hypothesis. It may be the possible, or it's always better to start with a word if or then. So for your understanding, I'm having a question right now at here. So the question is, what if the question which I have taken at here, if I give 2 cups of water to a tomato plant, then it will grow better than the plants given more or less water. So see the hypothesis at here. If I give, always it starts either if or then. If I give 2 cups of water to a tomato plant, it's only 2 cups per day. That is one of my scientific study. So I need to observe if the tomato plant will be grow better than the plants given more or less water. So this is the hypothesis. That hypothesis will understand when it reaches to the conclusion. Okay. So in the hypothesis, always we give an answer. That answer is not a conclusion. It's always a problematic statement. Now let's observe this. The same hypothesis is a tentative answer to the question. Tentative means it will changes, a temporary. So hypothesis gives us a temporary answer to the question, and it has a testable explanation for what was observed. Yeah, so if I give the 2 cups of water to tomato plant, so I need to observe. So I am having as a testable explanation. So after that it may correct or it may not correct. So it's as a tentative, it will always changes. So here I'm going to show one picture. Try to write your hypothesis in the comment section. Write a hypothesis for the picture below. So what you are seeing, it's a goat on the horse, it climbed. Try to make your own hypothesis. So I am not going to ask any rocket science, it's just a common sense fun hypothesis. Make your own hypothesis. Okay, let's step 4. So after making hypothesis, in the step 4, we need to do certain procedure. So what really this procedure contains? It's a numbered step set of directions that explains the experimental setup. Yeah, in the procedure, we need certain materials list also. So to do certain experiment, so this is the very crucial step. After making hypothesis, to prove my hypothesis, I need to do certain procedure. In that procedure, so there are so many steps are involved. In some cases, we need to take a good mathematical help, or sometimes we need to wait for years to get the result. A long waited procedure also gives a very better result. Now finally, after making procedure, now we need to collect the step-by-step data collection and data analysis. So what we recorded in the procedure, just like an experiment, so that's the basic knowledge we do when we do certain experiment. So we need to collect that data. So in other words, we can take that we need to write certain values. So that's the procedure, how we are doing that. After collecting the data, so we need to make a tabular form, or we need to get certain explanation. So this data collection may be in terms of the tables, or maybe in terms of the graphs, or any kind of the statistics. So whatever the information we got from the procedure, so that procedure we need to make as a data collection. Now that data collections leads certain conclusions. So here we can observe this, that dolphins, so when they reaches to this icy areas, so after making certain so many data collections, we will reach to as a second last step. So that goes to as an our the final step that goes to as a conclusion. So in the conclusion, so we will get the answer for the problem. First step we observe, and in the observations we ask a question ourselves. Now in the second step we made certain hypothesis, and the third step we made certain interpretation, and after we need to go to certain experiment procedure, then after data collection, and finally comes to as a conclusion. So this conclusion is based on the statement what was the data we collected in the procedure. So that procedure we made according to our hypothesis. Suppose if the answer was wrong, then what the hypothesis I made, that hypothesis is not correct. We need to change that hypothesis. Now again we will change our hypothesis. Again we will do the procedure, and again we will do the experiment and the data collection, everything, and we can just come to as a final conclusion. So this will becomes as a sometimes successful, sometimes may not successful. Let me explain it here. So the early model of the planetary motion, Copernicus said that sun is revolving around the earth. So that's the first hypothesis he made about the planetary motion. So many years that hypothesis was believed. Earth is at the center of the planetary system. After so many years, Tycho Brahe, he made certain observations on the planetary motion, and he recorded his all observations. He made a notes, and bad thing is that he died without coming to conclusion. After so many years, Kepler, he studied the Tycho Brahe observations. He collected the data. The Kepler also got the same question. He also wants to find what was the exact answer. So he researched. He got the certain data collection from the Tycho Brahe. He used that Tycho Brahe data collection, and he made his own experiment and observations. And finally, he concluded that the Copernicus planetary model was wrong, and he made that sun is at the center of the planetary system. Now, what was the hypothesis made by the Copernicus? That was changed by the Kepler with the help of a scientific study. But the Copernicus, it was his hypothesis. That was not conclusion. So that's all about the study of the scientific method. It's all fun. It's all depends upon what we observe in the first place. So that imagination power should present being a good science student.